Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. This is part 89 of ASP.NET MVC tutorial. In this video, we will discuss remote validation in MVC. Sometime to check if a field value is valid, we may need to make a database call. A classic example of this is the user registration page that you can see here. To register user, we need to ensure that the provided username is unique. So to check if the username is not taken already, we have to make a call to the server and then check the respective database table. There is something called remote attribute that is extremely useful in situations like this. Let's understand using this attribute with an example. We will be using this table TBL users. For this demo, the first step here is to add an edu.NET entity data model based on this table TBL users. So let's flip to Visual Studio. Right click on the model. Add a new item. Select data. Edu.NET entity data model. And let's name this sample data model. Click add. And we want to generate the model from the database. Next. And we want first to add the database. So new connection. Click this. And here you need to specify server name or provide the server name. And how to get the server name? Go to the SQL Server Management Studio, click this, and here is the name, server name. Copy this, close it, and go back to Visual Studio, specify the server name here, and then window authentications, trust server certificate. If you don't trust the server certificate, you will not be able to see the list. Okay, so trust server certificate, and now you will see the list of your database. So what is your database name? It is sample 29 and test the connection. Test connection succeeded. Click OK. OK. And we want the connection string to be saved as sample DB context. Within the web.config file, sample DB context, the connection string to be saved as sample DB context within the web.config file. Click next. So this is going to connect to the database and retrieve all the views, tables, and stored procedures. Let's expand tables. Select TBL users table, and we want our models to live in models namespace. And we want our models to live in models namespace. Click finish. So this should generate an entity with name TBL users. So it is taking time now. So this should generate an entity with name TBL users. Wait for a while. Okay. But let's change that to user. Change the name to user. Let's save the changes. Now it will take time to save the changes. So wait for the saving the changes. After saving it, we will build our solution. So wait for the saving of the changes. It is taking time now. What is happening? It is still come on. Save it. It is taking too much time in saving the changes. What is happening to it? Come on, save it. At last the item saved, as you can see here. Now build our solution. So that this user entity class is compiled. So build succeeded. The next step is to add a controller. We will select this MVC5 controllers with views using entity framework. Because we are creating this project in Visual Studio 2022, so here we have this MVC5. In the previous version there was MVC4 or 2 or 3. So we will select this MVC5 controller with views using entity framework. Let's call this home controller. Model class user MVC demo dot models. And our model class is going to be the user entity class we have just generated, and the data context class is going to be sample DB context. Click add, click add, click add. So this should generate the home controller and all the respective views. Wait for a while. Okay, the home controller is generated, and let's see the views. Here it is, the views. We have all these create.chtml, delete.chtml, details, edit. Let's delete this shared folder. Okay, not right now. We are not going to delete this shared folder. I will tell you why, and we will delete it later. Okay. Let's navigate to this create view, and let's get rid of this script section. Which script section? This script section. Delete this. Remove this script section. Otherwise we would get a compiler error. Let's run the application. Save the changes. And run the application. Now at the moment, Now at the moment we don't have any user within this TBL users. So when this index view index view renders, when this index view renders, there will be no users on this view. Okay. Now let's create a new user. Click this link. Okay. Why I was saying that we first delete the shared folder. Why to delete this shared folder? Because we are seeing here this footer and header application name. Okay. If we go back to the list, here is the also footer and header name. So to remove this footer and header name, what we need to do? We need to delete this shared folder and delete this views start.chtml file. Okay. Save the changes and build the solution. Build succeeded. Go back to the browser. Now what to do? Refresh it. Okay. Look at here. So when this index view renders, there will be no users on this view. Okay. Now let's create a new user. Let's try creating a user with test as the full name. Test as the username. And test as the password. Click create. So this is fine. We don't have any user with that username test. So this record is created fine. This record is created fine. But let me create another user with the same username and let's see. So create new with the same username. Create another user with the same username. Test. And let's see. So click create. Look at that. It allows me. So we are having now username in a basically duplicated username. That is what we want to prevent. And let's see how to achieve that using remote attribute. So let's flip to the Visual Studio. The first step here is The first step here is to add a method to our controller, which is going to perform the validation for us. So this method is going to return true or false. If the method returns true, then the validation has succeeded. If it returns false, then the validation has failed. So the return type here is going to be Boolean. And let's call this method is username available. And we are going to pass a parameter to this function user name. So we are going to use link extension method any. Link extension method any here. So here we have an instance of our sample DB. So here we have an instance of our sample DB context class. So this object has got users property, which is going to list all the users that are present within the database. So within that list, I'm going to check, if there is any user. So this object, sample DB context, so this object DB has got users properties, which is going to list all the users that are present within the database. So within that list, I'm going to check if there is any user with the provided username. If that is the case, then we don't want to allow the user to be created. Okay. So basically the validation should fail. So if you look at this any link extension method, so if you look at this any link extension method, it is going to return a Boolean type. Return a Boolean, true or false. Okay. So this method returns true if a match is found. Otherwise, it is going to return false. Okay, so let's say user says that user says that user dot username equal to whatever username. User dot username equal to whatever username. That we are passing into this function. So if there is a match, this function will return true. Otherwise, it is going to return false. Okay, so if there is a match, that means username is already existing. In which case, we don't want to, allow the user to be created, meaning the validation should fail. Okay, so we should return false in that case. If the validation has to fail, okay, that is why we are going to negate. That is why we are going to negate whatever this function is, going to return. So return that value. So return that value. Okay. So a very simple. So a very simple method. This method. This method should return true if we want the validation to be succeeded. Otherwise, it should return false. Okay. Now the validation is done on the client side. Validation is done on the client side. Okay, so we need to return JSON result back instead of Boolean. So we need to return JSON result back instead of Boolean. So let's change the return type to JSON result. We have changed the return type to JSON result. And to return JSON result from a controller action method, we can use JSON function. And to return JSON result from a controller action method, we can use JSON function. Okay, so we are passing true or false. So we are passing true or false to this method. To this method, JSON method. It is going to wrap that inside a JSON result. It is going to wrap that inside a JSON result object. And then return it. Okay, and then there is another parameter that we need to specify. And there is another parameter and there is another parameter that we need to specify, JSON request behavior. JSON request behavior. That is going to be allow get. because this a request to this method a request to this method will be issued as a get request. Okay, so this is the method. So this is the method which is responsible for performing the validation. Now we need to hook up this method with username property of the user class. And if you look at this auto-generated, and if you look at this auto-generated file that we have within this within this auto-generated file, we have our user class. And this class has got all the properties, ID, full name, username, etc. Okay, now it is not a good practice to make any changes to this auto-generated file, because if this file were to auto-generate again, we would lose all of our changes. So let's add another user class. Before that, adding the another user class, I want to say that we are using MVC5. That is why this user auto-generated class user.cs file is there. While in previous MVC4 or 2, this auto-generated file was in this sample data model dot designer dot cs. Okay, so because we are using this MVC5, so this is the auto-generated file user.cs file. So as I told, it is not a good practice to make any changes to this auto-generated file, because if this file were to auto-generate again, we would lose all of our changes. So let's add another user class. Since this is generated as a partial class, we can add another partial user class. So let's right click on the models, add class, let's call this user extension dot files. User extensions .cs file. Why we name it as user extensions.cs file? Because we already have user.cs file as a auto-generated file. So we can't rename it, we can't give it the same name, user.cs. So we have named it as user extensions.cs and click OK, click add. Click add and remove this extension from here. And this is going to be a partial class. This is going to be a partial class. I'm going to add another class here, and let's call this maybe user metadata. And this class user metadata is going to contain the metadata for our user. Okay, so somehow we need to link these two classes, and to link them I'm going to use metadata type attribute, and to link them I'm going to use metadata type attribute. And that type attribute is present in system.component model.annotations data annotation. This metadata type attribute is present in system.component model dot data annotations namespace. So let's decorate this with metadata type attribute and then specify the type which contains the, and let's specify the type and then specify the type which contains the metadata for this class. This user metadata class. So this user metadata class contains the metadata for user class. All right. And then let's specify the property here. Public string. What is the name of the property username? What is the name of the property? Name of the property username. This is what we want to validate. All right, so we are going to decorate this property with remote attribute. And again, this remote attribute is present in system.web.mvc. So this remote attribute is present in system.web.mvc namespace. And let's specify the remote attribute here. So here we will specify the name of the method which is going to do the validation for us. And it is this method. And it is this method is username available. So we are going to pass that. So we are going to pass that. And the next parameter is the name of the controller, which contains that method. So we need to pass the name of the controller as the next parameter. And the controller which contains this method is the home controller. And that is what we are passing here. And we can also specify the error message. We can also specify the error message that we want to be displayed in case if the validation has failed. So let's say the validation error message is username already in use. Username already in use. Okay, so we are done. So let's build our solution. Build succeeded. The next step is for this validation to work, we need to reference some script files. So let's go to our create view. Where is the create view? Create.chtml file. So we need 3 script files. We need jQuery itself. We need jQuery itself. We need jQuery.validate. And jQuery.validate.unobtrusive. So let's drag and drop these script files onto this view. So let's drag one by one. This is the jQuery we need to drag and drop. Come on. What is happening to this? Okay, let me drag this first. What is happening to it? It is not getting drag and drop. Come on. What is happening to it? Come on, come on. Come on, come on. Okay. Now we need to drag and drop this one. Okay. Come on. So it is dropped in wrong place. So copy this and paste it here. Okay. And the third one, which we need to drag and drop, is this one. jQuery validate dot unobtrusive means.js file. Okay. So we have successfully dragged and dropped these required script files onto this view. And then let's also drag and drop the CSS file. So within the content, there is site.css file. So let's drag and drop that. So carefully drag and drop. So carefully drag and drop this file here. We also need bootstrap.css to be drag and dropped. So where is the bootstrap.css? Here it is. So drag and dropped it here. Okay. And let's change the syntax to use tilde character. Though we have already the tilde character here, so we don't need any changes. If you drag and drop these files and then you may see the path like this, then what you need to do, you need to change these dots and slash with the tilde symbol. Okay. All right. So let's build our solution. Build succeeded. And let's navigate to the create view. So go back to the browser and let's navigate to the create view. Look at the full name, test, username test, and look at this. The moment I tab away, we get that validation error. Username already in use. Okay. On the other end, if I try test 1, look at that, the validation goes away. And then once I create, click create, we should be able to create a user with that username, test 1. Okay. Now for this validation to work, make sure within this function, this parameter, the name of the parameter must match with the name of the field on the create view. So here the name of the parameter is, username. And if you look at the create view, the field that you see, this username field, the input field has got the same name. The input field has got the same name, username. If you misspell it, so within home controller, if you misspell it something like username 1, maybe, the default model bind in ASP.MVC will not bind the field value, with with this parameter, and hence the validation will not work as expected. All right. So obviously, for the validation to work, you need to add. So obviously, for the validation to work, you need to reference these script files: jQuery, jQuery.validate, jQuery.validate.unobtrusive, unobtrusive. And we also need to make sure that both client validation and an unobtrusive JavaScript are enabled. That's it for today. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.